Welcome back. All right, so something a little different today. So, yep, taking another break from talking about WrestleManias. There you go. So there was a time, way back when. I was about 13, 14, and I started coming up with wrestling names and created my own wrestling thing. And I would write down cards and I would figure out, okay, who's moving up, who's moving down. And I also wanted to talk about. So you'll notice there's some stuff on the board here. When WrestleMania was really big, and Great American Bash was the one I really liked. I liked that Great American Bash wasn't just a single event. There was a time where Great American Bash was kind of like it would be ongoing, a lot of fun. And I thought, I think if I'm gonna have my own wrestling, I'm making up just in my head. There were no video games, there was nothing, no internet. That it should have its own name, and I should have my own pay-per-view name. So I had Terror in the Isles was one that I had. I know that's been utilized by companies. I had Battles of the World. I know that's been utilized by companies. Eventually, I brought this to the internet. So eventually, I ran an eFed, which worked fine because I'd been doing this since the '80s. So I just it was like putting on, really comfortable outfit. It just fit me. So eventually I came up with Battle of the Warriors. Now, what's funny with this is I called it BOTW. I would shorten it to BOTW. Well, now, of course, that's best of the worst on Red Letter Media, so I can't use that. And there have been times over the last, I'd say 5, 6 years, where I've thought, it would be fun to sit down and write a wrestling event again. The thing is, it takes a long time. Back when I was writing wrestling events, I would take, man, over a weekend. If it was a pay-per-view, pay-per-view, if I was writing an event, it would take me about 20 hours of writing. I don't know how many words it was. I don't remember. I know it was a lot, and it would be about 20 hours of me writing 10 hours per day. And then I would post the event, and then the following weekend I would do it all over again. So for people wondering, how does he do videos every single day? It's in my nature. It's how I am. And that meant that during the week, I was writing wrestling promos for my wrestlers as well, some of whom are on the board here, and some not so much. So Battle of the Warriors was my big one. Every year, that was my WrestleMania. No, I never had WWF wrestlers written into it because it wouldn't have really worked. I felt like, no, I'm going to play it that this is a multiverses, sort of like a multiverse kind of thing. Like they knew WWF existed, but weren't really worried about it because this is all just straight out of the brain. So 1987, Shannon Gaines, myself personally, versus the Terminator. That was the big main event. I know. Look, I was just entering my teen years, and creativity with names was not really a thing for me at this point in time. And the funny thing was, All Star Wrestling had a Terminator wrestler, and I was like, okay, so well that happened. And then there were Terminators. I seem to remember there being a tag team back in the day that was the Terminators, like multiple. It's just weird. Um, and then there were other weird things that went on during that time too, but we can talk about that a whole other time. The New Breed was something very different. If you watched WCW before it was WCW back in the '80s, remember the New Breed? They were interesting. Look them up if you haven't. I don't remember them being in Wrestle Crap, but they have to be in Wrestle Crap. They absolutely have to be. But this cage match, I wanted to point out first because the way that my character was written, because obviously it's not me. I'm not built like a wrestler. So it's just me and my brain. So of course I had myself in the hockey league that I'd created, and so why can't I be champion? And before anybody says, "Hey, is that like Hulk Hogan?" No, because none of this actually happened. If Hulk Hogan had made up a whole thing where he was always the champion, great. But this wasn't something that was on TV, and nobody else knew that it existed other than a few of my friends, kind of thing. So that was '87. The cage match ended up going, I want to say 73 minutes and 3 seconds. And that is audio of me calling a match where I'm watching nothing. Yeah, I don't know either. So I guess that's why when people ask, so did you always know that you wanted to be in broadcasting? In some level, yeah. I didn't really care what I did either. I would have been happy as a wrestling play-by-play guy. Um, I would have been actually over the moon if I could have done wrestling play-by-play. Then there was '86 Ghostly Figure and the Killer, and I apologize, the Killer. Yeah, any more Jason Voorhees mask? Because sure, although it was black, so there was that. But yeah, Ghostly Figure and the Killer. I had the Killer turn heel, and Ghostly Figure was like the one I built up to be the champion in '86. And I just envisioned him as a wrestler that was just all in white with accents of baby blue. And I was kind of on the fence as to whether or not I wanted him to wear a robe to the ring or what, but he was very, he didn't talk. He was a good guy, but he was just a whole mysterious thing, right? So, of course, it's the 80s, so you got to have some mysterious wrestlers in there. 89, Scavenger versus Night Dweller. So, I created Scavenger in 87, and he kind of became like, he was kind of like my favorite one that I had created. And so when I got into the EFED thing, Scavenger was the guy that I first brought into EFEDs. I was like, I'm okay with him losing because, he was never a dominant wrestler, but he was tough and he was a different character. So I felt like Scavenger, I could create a really good character online in a wrestling fed using him. Night Dweller, I don't think I ever used. I wanted to. Now, Night Dweller was a character that was very unique. I was like, okay, he cannot be seen in daylight in any promo. There won't be any event that's outdoors where he wrestles, and almost like vampire-ish, but not really. I didn't have him like all goth, but he was Night Dweller, and he was the leader of Dark Forces. And so I thought, you know what, he's coming in, and I was writing promos for him for like daily, and with the idea that he would debut at Battle of the Warriors. That was going to be his first match, and that he wanted Scavenger. He felt like if I'm going to make a name for myself, I want Scavenger. And so Scavenger was one of the upper card guys. Think along the lines of like Jacob Fatu in terms of toughness and just overall crowd, really being behind him. And Night Dweller beat him clean. Night Dweller beat him absolutely clean. It was, that was the way that I wrote it. I was like, Night Dweller needs to feel, because the problem I had as a kid was that the good guys would always win. Because I was a little kid. I wanted the good guys to always win. But I realized as I got into my teen years, the whole brooding teen thing, that, the bad guys are going to win sometimes. And that's just the way it's going to be. And Night Dweller would win feuds as a heel as well and move along. And so it was the first time where I'd really had that, where I brought in a bad guy and I didn't just get him beat up. Because, sure, 88 is the year I think this one went down, which was Greg Anderson and Steve Lang, the sensational ones. So I had the Sensational 7. I talked about this. I was talking about the stables. So the Sensational 7 was a group of just 7 guys. It started out as a horseman kind of deal, but I grew it to 7. Never went past 7. I thought anything more than 7 in a stable is insane. In fact, trying to figure out how to get 7 onto a card, sometimes it was tricky. But tag teams were a part of it, right? So Greg Anderson and Steve Lang were my version of Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. No nonsense, not, any, like... Anderson I viewed as more of the high flyer. Lang was the technician. Neither of them were very big. I think I had them both at 240, 245, somewhere in that region. I envisioned them to be about 6'2", kind of thing. And so, they're not small because I didn't have any cruiserweights. Cruiserweights weren't a thing in the 80s, at least for wrestling I was watching. So I didn't have any. But they were against Steve Blake and Joe Davidson. Now, Joe Davidson was the Intercontinental Champion when I started the whole thing back in 84, but he lost the title and he started to fall down the card. Think along the same lines as like when Ric Flair was being booked by Bischoff and Flair's kind of dropping down the card. And so what I did with Joe was something that wrestling just does. You put him in a tag team. And so I felt like Joe's the veteran. He's the technician. Steve Blake was a larger wrestler and the guy who's doing all the power slams and the choke slams and everything. And so I called them Big and Bad. That was the tag team nickname. They wore yellow and black tights, and I, kind of called it the yellow and black attack a little bit. Sorry, Striper, but wasn't used in wrestling, so I thought, sure. But yeah, that was in 88. And this was when I started to realize, hey, I want a tag team. So this is before Night Dweller, but this is when I realized I want there to be a bad guy tag team that can win. Doesn't need to cheat. I realized pretty early that cheating to win doesn't necessarily make a good heel. What can make a good heel is just being a jerk. Like, yeah, you won the match. What are you doing? Well, come on. You already won the match. Stop beating him up. That kind of thing. And so that's how Blake and Davidson were. But eventually I turned them face because that's how wrestling works, that they were kind of badass. And so, yeah, Anderson and Lang held the titles for, I want to say 2.5 years undefeated. 2.5 years I had them hold the titles undefeated. And it was Blake and Davidson they had to go through in order to do that. I know, weird, right? And then this was like one of my proudest booking moments, and this is '97, I think. So yeah, this went on for about 15 years that I would do this. So it was yours truly versus Bruce Miller versus Blair Drake. These names will mean nothing to you, so I will explain. Bruce Miller's the character had been alongside my character as a tag partner and as an ally within the Sensational Seven since 1984. They've been together and friends. So I booked a match where myself and Bruce Miller both wanted Blair Drake in a match. Blair Drake was kind of the way to put it is, you know how in Marvel you have a character, a hero, and then the villain ends up having the same powers as the hero just to neutralize them and just to bring that peril in. Blair Drake was like a negative version of me. Like if there was a mirrorverse like in Star Trek, he would have been the opposite. But did he have to cheat to win? Not necessarily. And so what he did was I booked it this way that it was the triple threat match. And during the match, he caused problems between myself and my tag partner. Because that's what happens. The two are beating up the one guy, and then eventually the bad guy gets in the middle and puts that little bit of doubt in. So eventually I turned Bruce heel because I couldn't figure out a way to turn myself heel. So Bruce turned heel, turned against me, and so Blair ends up winning the match. And it was the first time that I had booked something where I was trying to get a title back, and I didn't win it. I think that was the first time that had happened. Although it would happen again. Man, there was the four-way match as well, which I almost put on the board, but I'm trying to remember the fourth wrestler. I remember three of them. I know Night Dweller came out with the victory there over me, but I try to remember the other two. And then 96, I may have this wrong. You know what? I think I have this wrong. Let me change the date on that. I want to say 98 on this one. You know what? This 96, this might have been 90. No, because I was single. I was living in an apartment at the time. I'll say 98. Bruce Miller and Sandman. This is a storyline I wasn't very happy about. So you know how Rikishi did it for The Rock, and that was kind of. And there have been numerous WWE storylines. You go, really? That's the best thing you can come up with? Well, that's stupid. I had a storyline where Bruce Miller, and it was after he had turned heel, got attacked backstage, and it's an old trope, right? And Bruce wasn't telling anybody who did it. So Bruce didn't miss any time, but he wasn't telling anybody who did it. And eventually he attacked the wrestler that did it. He's just in the ring and he just turns around and just beats the ever-loving... You know what Jade did to Naomi there? Sort of like that. Just absolutely obliterated him. And then I had a match between the two. The problem was Sandman. It's not the Sandman from ECW. It's not. It's really not. I was very upset when I started, getting into the ECW, WCW thing, going, oh man, those are names I make. Come on. But Sandman's very common, so get it. But yeah, it didn't work for me because Sandman wasn't like a main event guy. So that's why I mentioned the Rikishi thing, because he wasn't really a main event guy. Bruce won the feud easily, and then that kind of put Bruce and myself back together as a tag team. Although it would change. The Sensational Seven became passe, and the group became the Mafia. All wearing suits, and the manager, I played it off like this guy is actually a mob boss. That we decided, we're going to get crap done around here. We're going to need to bring in somebody who can really help us when it comes to the whole victory thing and how to deal with feuds. So I actually, wrote in a mob boss, and now I look at NXT and I go, Tony D'Angelo. It's very similar. It's not the same, but it's similar. And so I added just the Mafia. I'd call them the family as well. So, a little bit of Tony D'Angelo there. 92, myself and Bruce Miller, who had the tag titles a few times, fighting Night Dweller and Black Panther. So that would have been, 3 years after the Scavenger entrance. And it was because Black Panther was the right-hand man to Night Dweller, and Bruce Miller was the right-hand man to my character. So it's one of those things that when I look at WWE and I look at how they book things, there are times where I go, you know what, there's a really good one here you guys just kind of missed out on. But At any rate, I understand it's a little different with real wrestlers than it is with just made up people that you can just put into a feud with each other and not have to worry about egos and all that. I was terrible at booking female wrestlers when it came to this. I was terrible at creating female wrestlers. And when I did the EFED thing, I got better at creating female wrestlers, although still not to the level I wanted to. There was always a complexity of my male characters that the female characters never quite had. And so Kathy Smith was kind of my version of Wendy Richter. Kelly Buchanan was the antithesis of Kathy. So I pictured Kathy would be blonde, Kelly would be brunette. No, they were both blonde. There was some similarities, but there were some definite differences between the two. And that was in '88. And I'd love to say there were a lot of women that I had a lot of tag teams though, a lot, and I'll come down to that down here. And then one of my favorite feuds ever, '95, Scavenger versus Vesuvius. So for anybody who e-fedded with me, ta-da! Scavenger and Vesuvius. Vesuvius, obviously named after the mountain, although his tagline was, they named the mountain after me, meaning he's explosive and everything. But Vesuvius is the only wrestler I ever had that I created a title specifically for them. I created what I called the superior title. And I wish wrestling did superior matches. Superior decision means the referee stops the match. Says this wrestler cannot continue. It's over. Vesuvius never pinned anybody. He would just beat them until they didn't get up. And until the referee said, okay, that's enough. Stop. There was never a pinfall. He didn't care. He'd be like, I don't care to pin anybody. So I created a superior title, and that was the idea was it's similar to Last Man Standing, but there's no 10 count. It's just the referee's like, okay, they're out, they're done. It's over. You win. And then, of course, because he was a heel, he'd keep beating them up. He'd be like, cool, I won. All right, can I beat him up some more? No? Well, I'll just throw the referee out of the ring and do it anyways. So Vesuvius was one of my favorites, and eventually I created the group Anarchy. Anarchy's not on the board. Should be there. Absolutely should be there. Man, how did I mess up with Anarchy? It's because I was writing it on the board and not saying it out loud. So that's why I forgot to put Anarchy on the board. Bad THG/TEG. But yeah, Vesuvius was one of my favorites that I ever created. Absolutely. I just thought that was such a cool name. I just thought for a wrestler that would really work. And sadly, the EFED world is not what it once was. If it was, then, I might be tempted to dive back in someday. And I'd probably use Scavenger and Vesuvius if I started doing the EFED thing again. Calvin's Army was a group that was the heel group. They were like my version of Bobby the Brain Heenan's, the Heenan family. The Heenan family was never seemed to be successful. That's why I didn't include the Heenan family when I was talking about my favorite stables. But neither was Calvin's Army. It didn't work. It was managed by Calvin Cool, spelled with a K. Yeah, it just didn't hit. And I even initially I was like, And you're probably thinking, well, why didn't you just change it then? Well, because I can't, because it's canon that he'd come in. So eventually, the people that were in the army ended up in Dark Forces, or ended up in other groups. But the Anti-7 I have on the board because that was what Blair Drake did. Eventually, what took down the Sensational 7 was that Blair Drake had a group, and this is before this. He had a group that basically was there to counterbalance the Sensational 7 and one by one, take him out kind of thing, and that would eventually wear down the Sensational 7. The group just went separate ways. So all in all, I created, it had to be over 200 different wrestlers. Had to be. Because I had to have jobbers. You had to have jobbers. So the first thing I did was just create just really lame, stupid names for jobbers. My favorite was Barry the Bruiser. I was like, you know what? Barry the Bruiser works. Yep, you got the B and the B. That works. And he, as far as I remember, never won a thing. But that'd usually be the opening match, was a good guy against Barry the Bruiser. And yeah, you get the win. I used to make audio tapes of me calling matches for this. Those tapes are gone. Thank God. And there have been times where I've thought, there might be a way for me to do something like this where I might be able to commentate it. It's just, I don't know that anybody would listen. I think it would just be weird. And I don't know that I would be able to come up with storylines that would work. And then, if there's no noise in the background, it just makes it all kind of odd, right? So anyways, there you go. I wanted to close out by mentioning the Pretty Boys. So right now in WWE, You do have a tag team that reminds me of the Pretty Boys in that it was Lovely Lorenzo and Loverboy Lance Armin was the name of the wrestlers. And the way I envisioned it was that they'd wear very flowery outfits, very neon outfits, ridiculous sunglasses. But in the ring, they kicked ass. Like in the ring, I was like, you know what? But in the ring, they're fantastic. So eventually, they ended up being one of the top tag teams that I had going at the time. And so I'm very happy to see Pretty Deadly doing well in WWE, and I hope they get a run with the tag belts because I think that kind of gimmick can work. And they're taking it kind of comically, but there's still there's still the possibility of some seriousness there. So I just wanted to talk about it. So there you go, something a little different today from TEG. I played a little over 3 hours of street hockey today, and I'm still alive to talk about it. And no bruises, no marks, nothing. I got a couple sore toes. That's it. I got hit in the foot with a ball. That's it. That's it. Other than that, I was fine. My gloves protected me. I had people saying, "Oh, you don't need to wear street hockey gloves. That's stupid. That's so." Yeah. The ball hit my gloves. If I wasn't wearing the gloves, that would have hurt. So, anyways, there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if anybody's like, "What did I just watch?" It's just one of those things that I feel like I've never really. I don't think I've ever talked about that on this channel before. I know I've talked about the hockey league that I had going and everything, but this is different. This is that, I would build up pay-per-views and have feuds and all this, and I had fun booking everything because nobody would complain about the booking because it was all just up in here. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And yeah, doesn't get more bonkers than that, does it? Thank you guys so much for all your support. I got a hockey game to watch. I will talk to you again soon.